Okay, so like I said, around 72 was the first time I saw 2 turntables.
Yeah.
And then I went back in town, Jimmy Stewart became fabulous downstairs,
Right.
and the kids, you know, would still go up there and hang with the jukebox, but those that were in the know, you know, because we had heard about it in New York, and this disco and that, you know, because we always wanted to go to New York, you know, all guys do when they're young, right? So we could hear different things, different people would tell you different things, and of course the DJs, and see, Danae, wonderful DJ, you know, but he didn't like to share, okay? And there's a lot of that in the DJ world.
I'm interested in that subject because I know that there are, we've talked to various people who, you know, said that it should be about sharing.
Yes.
But that very often it wasn't, and people would, like, you know, there's a story about Val scratching the label off of a record so people wouldn't see what it was.
I think it was called.
Oh, yeah, might have
the new Debango.
I don't remember which record it was, but it happened to everybody more than once.
Jimmy had moved up to the 3rd floor now. This was 1975, and I learned about the Y-jacks into the amplifier with the turntables. And I was, you know, doing it at home, and I put the felt down because I had met a black kid named Anthony Porter, and you know he you know showed us with the 45s. We went over to his house in the project, and my mother was sitting there, and she'd go cutting up them damn records, you know. And we were there just spinning and spitting.
But now the technique then, though, was that Jimmy was one of the people, it seems to me, at least here, was one of the first people who was extending records, right? Like
extending them and blending them. That's what they called it, a blend. They
Right.
didn't call it a mix or a segue like they did in New York. It was a blend.
Yeah.
And it was very gay sounding, you know, but very, it made so much sense. And that was the idea. They would practice and practice, Jimmy and Danae, to blend these records, which really weren't made at all for any kind of DJ mixing like they are today. They're so homogenized, the intros, middles, and breaks at the end. So, you know, that was the thing, and if they were found a fabulous blend, it would be, you know, go down in history.
It would go in their blend book, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, some people carry, well,
if
Jimmy
they kept
was,
one.
Yeah, Danae was a strict blend book person. Everything went down, you know, because finally, you know, they added variable speed. There was no variable speed, you remember. And they used to put a shot glass, small glass there, and put 2 D-cell batteries in there, and put it on the record so they could slow the platter down just enough to get that mix. And you would turn it with your finger like all hell and with this. And I mean, we got very adept at working these machines, you know.
Now, Stephen Burke is credited here with
what did she say?
Discovering. Well, no, I think other people have said it too, but I don't know. You know, just that he was one of the first people to actually start counting records by beat per minute, and he had a whole book of records of his music and how it was organized by beat per minute. And he was one of the first people to do that.
Stephen was there. We were all children of Jimmy and Danae's, you know, and we were all there at the 1st floor, and then it graduated to the top floor. And Stephen was there, but I never met him and knew him, you know. And he was lucky to get a break before I did. But he told me that he would buy the records, go to New York or whatever, and go down Skippy White's down Browntown and get the music. And he would take it to school. And he was studying at Bridgewater State. And he worked at the radio station for, you know, would, you know, join the radio club or whatever it was. And he would go in there and he would try and do it there. But radio station setups are very different from, you know, nightclub setups, as you know. So there was no constant cue. Like once you turn the thing up, it would click and the thing would drop out of your ear. So, you know, but there was no need for it for radio. You just slammed the thing in and boom. But to do a long blend, that was the thing. So that was what we strived to do, to make blends and make people happy with the music and, you know, do the fabulous mix as well.
And to extend it a little bit, like I said, like Jimmy would take the drum break from something and he would just keep going over it.
2 Pigs and a Hog. It was off Cooley High soundtrack.
Yeah, that's the one.
And it was like a 2-minute break. And, you know, he'd have the record go up to such a point and everybody would freak and he would fast cut that break in and everybody would do the hokey pokey and go mental and then back into the song again, you know. So they were very clever what they were trying to do.
And the type of dancing then was not like any kind of like, I mean, I know that disco for a while became famous with sort of like, with things like the hustle with sort of like line dancing and like sort of unified kind of dancing, but that wasn't really the kind of dancing you guys did. It was all more individual.
Right.
Or with somebody else. But.
Yeah. Once in a while, a little line thing might happen with 4 or 5 people, but it would quickly disintegrate. You know, people wanted to be with who they wanted to dance with, and dance free spirit, whatever way. You know, that was more of a straight thing. See, and I really feel that the music belonged in the gay bars, because I used to call it jungle music or spade tunes, because, you know, and that's why I used to hang with the blacks, because I said, well, this is their music, you know, if I'm going to find out about it, this, you know, here's the DJ, here's the blacks, you know. How
did that work in Boston when it was such a racially sort of polarized city?
Well,
to some
you know,
degree?
just like it is now, everybody had their little section of the room, you know, and the blacks were to the right of the DJ booth, and the whites were to the left, and the, you know, bridge and tunnel people were across the pit dance floor this way, you know, so everybody had their little spot where they hung out, and we go in there, you know, during the week, because it was a, you know, 7-night-a-week thing eventually, you know, and we preferred it, and, you know, and each bar had their special nights, of course, you know, you go to the 12 on Wednesday, and Sticks on Thursday, and the other side on Friday, or Cabaret. Cabaret also was a fabulous place.
Val worked there, right?
Which was Lansdowne Street, but I mean, before it became 15 Lansdowne Street when Addison bought it, John Addison, it was just after the Boston Tea Party, which was like a straight rock and roll band. I think the Who performed
psychedelic kind of,
yeah, and it was very primitive. There was 2 columns of speakers and one of those color wheels. I don't think there was a mirror ball in there. And what happened was, you know, I would get with my friends, my straight friends, and we'd get all twisted, you know, on Friday or Saturday night. And, you know, around 12 o'clock, we were all feeling good, and we had nowhere to go, you know, all dressed up with nowhere to go. And I said, well, I know a place, because the Cabaret was so big and so free-spirited, and it was so many mixed people there. It just didn't, you know, really look like an intense gay bar like the 12 or Sporters was. So I could bring my friends in there, and we used to sneak beers in our shirt coats and everything, and smoke grass in there, and it was really, I mean, something special, because there was no place else like that. And the music was tremendous. You couldn't get near the DJ booth. It was like way up high and unsuspended from the ceiling. And you just weren't allowed on that ladder. You could put your drink around the bottom of it, but, you know, you just didn't climb up there. It was just understood.
So all the time you're going out, you have an eye on getting your own DJ job at some point? Like, what's your ambition in that direction?
Well, I was going to university, Boston University, studying physical therapy, if you can believe that. And, you know, that was what my major was. And halfway through, I was gone 2.5 years, and I just said, you know, they don't teach what I want to do. You know, and that was when I finally dropped out of school, which would have been, you know, 72, 3, 4, 5, 75, when I met Philip, you know, and I became a professional homosexual, and just started going, you know, to the Fenway and going to the 12 and hanging with Jimmy, you know, because I would go in early, you know, around 10, and I'd go in and I'd, you know, feel like smoking, and yeah, sure, come on, and shut the door, you know, and he would just tell me, you know, I said, did you get any new records or whatever? Oh, yes. And were you here last night? No, I wasn't. Oh, they were screaming all night. They just felt like screaming. Really, what did you play? You know, and then I would tell him what Danae played the night before, you know, at his night down at Sticks, and I said, well, Danae did fast cuts all night, you know, no blending. And he goes, oh, really? He said, fast cut can be kicky too. I said, oh, absolutely, they're effective, you know. So we, you know, he was the guy, and what happened was, eventually they wanted to put a DJ booth downstairs for the girls, okay, and they wanted a women DJ to play for them, you know, because they wanted their own thing too. And at the time, Wendy was there also. We were all there, children. I mean, we didn't even know each other really, but you know, we were all there. And Jimmy hand-selected Wendy. And taught her
Wendy Hunt.
Wendy Hunt, yes, and taught her how to count and do everything. Where Jimmy never taught me and told me, I would just observe. You know, while I sat in the booth, I would say, "Oh, right," and you know, and I could just hear what he was hearing through the headphone. You know, because I had memorized the records, and you know, and I was lucky enough to get my break. I did have a small gig in 1977 at Lansdowne. I finally made it in there. They fired Anthony Porter for whatever reason. He didn't comb his hair right, whatever it was, and I went in there. So Philip and I were working there. They had the Rainbow Room, which is Spit or whatever that evolved into.
Yeah.
It was another club.
Axis and all that.
Axis, exactly. And then there was the big room, and Philip and I were going back and forth and switching, and I think this was after Conrad was there.
Yeah.
First they started with New York DJs. Then they finally put Danae in as the resident. They asked Danae, and he went, and Jimmy was asked to go to New York. He had to open 12 West. And we were so damn proud that out of all the New York DJs that they picked our fabulous Jimmy Stewart, you know, who was just so wonderful to all of us, to go down to the biggest quadraphonic club, you know, in Manhattan, gay, membership only, you know, and the A-listers of homosexuals, and perform for them. You know, it was just so we couldn't have been prouder.
Yeah.
And so Danae became, you know, the top dog of Boston, you
Right.
know. But again, you know, he was a special kind of guy. He was a very drama person, and you know, with the bleach blonde hair, and he looked like a rock star. You know, he really pulled off the thing. But again, he was secretive. He'd tell you a couple of things, you know, but not too much. You know, because again, everybody wanted that job, and everybody would wait around the booth, you know, with their hands folded, waiting for the person to fuck up, so they could go run to the manager and say, "Hey, he's awful." You know, so that was how it was. And I had a brief, Philip and I, brief working time there at Lansdowne Street.
Right.
Okay, and we were having a fabulous time, and everything was going great. The floor was working. In fact, one night, it was a straight night in the big room, okay, and I ended with Do What You Want to Do by T-Connection. And the people were chanting, and the person they fired, Tony, was standing at the booth, going, "How about a fucking shit here, and I'm not here, you know, I'm going to kill her." And so at the end, they were chanting off the banquettes, "We won't go home, we won't go home," like this. And I said, "What are they saying?" Because I couldn't make it out. And Tony said, "We won't go home, Mary." And so then the light man, Tom Demers, grabs the microphone and says, "Let's take a bus down to New York." And, you know, got all mental. And of course, John Addison came down and had a fit.
Yeah.
But we were working there for a couple of months. And then one night he invited Philip over to his, and I over to his hotel room on the Hyatt Regency on Cambridge.
This is John Addison.
Right.
Yeah.
He said, "Come on over after hours, and you know, we'll have a couple of drinks and what have you." So I said, "Okay." Now this was probably around November, beginning of. We got in the little hotel room, and he opens up the windows wide to the Charles River, okay? And the breeze is coming in, and we're freezing, we got jackets on. He goes into the bathroom, strips on all his clothes, comes out in a Speedo with a bottle of poppers, and lays on the bed and starts rolling them back and forth, you know? And I'm looking at Philip like, "What's going on here?" And Philip's like, looked at me, "Time to leave." And, you know, we finally made our excuses, and the manager was also there, and he was gross. Had John Addison and the manager been better looking or whatever, or more sexually appealing, I'd say, you know, something might have happened, you know, because it was like that in those days. There was no AIDS.
Right.
There was no rubbers. There was, I mean, the worst you could get was, you know, gonorrhea or syphilis or crabs. And, you know, after the weekend, you would see everybody down the clinic, down in, you know, Tufts. And Mrs. Gloria Clare was the nurse, and Dr. Fiamora was the photographer and, you know, healer. And, you know, he was very, very, "Oh, don't worry now, you know, everything will be fine." And he would call in all the nurses and show them the lesions and everything, take photographs and document them, and, you know, all of that. And who knew that this would turn into what it turned into? But yeah, that was the worst you could get. So by next weekend, you were still out and ready to swing, you know.
But you think this was, so does that have something to do with why you guys didn't work there anymore? Like,
yes, we were immediately fired and
Yeah.
terminated when we got back. And you know, we went in and the manager said, "I'm really sorry, guys. You know, you guys are fabulous and we love you and all, but you know, John said he wants Tony back." So Tony went back, and of course, still to this day, I say, "Tony, you must have done that," because he used to try and hit on Val. Every time Val went to get paid, you know, Addison would go close the door and take off.
now you know we're going to talk to Tony at some point, right?
Right.
You have to ask him to.
Well, he swears that I would never sleep with anybody at all. On and on, you know, 40 years, he's still screaming that. And I said, "Well, okay, Tony, I believe you, but I mean, you've got to give us a credit here. I mean, he hit on every other DJ, and if they didn't give, out they went." So it's a funny little story.
Yeah,
you
no,
know?
that's good.